everyone. Thanks for joining us on your MTN statewide news this Wednesday. I'm Janelle Slade. Well, a tough day on the Montana coronavirus scene. The state today reporting 4 new deaths related to COVID-19 and more than 180 new confirmed cases. The deaths include 3 Rosebud County residents and 1 Lewis and Clark County resident. As of noon, 110 Montana residents have died from COVID-related illness. As for the 183 new confirmed cases, 72 of those are in Yellowstone County. The Lewis and Clark County victim is also the first COVID-19 related death reported at the Montana State Hospital in Warm Springs. Today, the Department of Public Health and Human Services confirmed a hospital patient died Monday. The first COVID-19 case at the hospital was reported July 17th. Now, since then, 9 hospital employees and 8 patients have been infected. The state says the remaining 16 individuals have all recovered. Well, starting today, Wolf Point Public Schools are now closed after a student tests positive for COVID-19. All activities and games are canceled for the rest of the week. Doors will be closed for at least 1 week in order to sanitize every building. Public health officials are now performing contact tracing to notify anyone that the student may have had contact with. Well, another challenge to Montana's general election. The Trump campaign, along with national and state Republican groups, filed suit this morning to halt all mail ballots in Montana. The suit was filed in U.S. District Court in Helena. It asked a judge to block an August order from Governor Steve Bullock that allowed Montana counties to choose whether they could conduct the November 3rd election by mail. County election offices had asked Bullock for the order, saying they had concerns about being able to conduct an election with polling stations during the coronavirus pandemic. Now, since then, about 40 Montana counties have chosen all-mail ballots. That means ballots would be mailed to all registered voters, and they could return them by mail or in person. The suit alleges that Montana does not have enough safeguards in place for all-mail elections. Well, the Trump administration is now working to lift endangered species protections for gray wolves in the lower 48 states. This could be approved by the end of the year. Removing federal protections gives states the power to manage their own animal populations. According to the Fish and Wildlife Service, the wolf population did rebound over the last few decades. Numbers now exceed more than 5,000. Some experts and activists say the species will be at risk of slipping back toward extinction if the plan goes through. Well, as of last night, an active duty airman with Malmstrom Air Force Base is behind bars. According to court documents, Corey James Cannon admitted to paying a minor for sex twice. He had been charged with aggravated promotion of prostitution. Cannon admitted to soliciting the child for sex when the child was 16 years old. That individual is now 17. Cannon also provided the names of local girls who he has had sex with while they were under the age of consent. Cannon indicated he has also exchanged nude photographs with local children as well. Prosecutors request Cannon's bail be set at $100,000. Well, it's now time to check in on the weather scene. Good afternoon, Ed. It is hot and going to be windy.
Yeah, a lot of wind already east of the divide, Janelle. Let's take a look where we were yesterday. These were the daytime highs on Tuesday, and they were in the 70s to 80s across central and western Montana, mainly the 80s into the eastern plains. Current temperatures are already there, so that's only as of midday, and we'll continue to see those temperatures rise as we start getting later in the afternoon. The winds have become very strong across eastern Montana all the way to the Dakotas, and that's going to increase our fire risk with lower humidity. And with fire conditions on the rise, the temperatures will be on the rise off and on throughout the week as well. Take a closer look at the short-term and the extended forecast coming up.
All right, thanks so much, Ed. Well, President Trump and Joe Biden will both hold in-person campaign events on the same day for the first time since March 2nd. It's exactly 6 months ago. Both campaigns are highlighting their response to the police shooting in Wisconsin. Natalie Brand has more details from the White House.
President Trump is headed to the battleground state of North Carolina for a campaign rally 61 days before the election.
This should never happen. A thing like this should never happen.
Tuesday in Kenosha, Wisconsin, the president visited businesses impacted by rioting following the police shooting of 29-year-old Jacob Blake.
Do you believe systemic racism is a problem in this country?
Well, you just keep getting back to the opposite subject. We should talk about the kind of violence that we've seen and Portland and here and other places. It's tremendous violence.
Supporters turned out to see the president and praised his focus on violence in the streets.
People were very afraid in Kenosha. Businesses were burned down. People were locking their doors in their houses, putting kids in basements, getting their hunting rifles out because they were scared for their life.
But some local leaders say the president's visit did not help.
The situation on the ground in Kenosha had been improving significantly over the past several days, and having the president come brought more attention to that situation. We also, unfortunately, didn't hear any condemnation of vigilante violence.
Both President Trump and Democratic nominee Joe Biden are out with new ads focusing on the nationwide protests, with each candidate blaming the other for the violence.
Criminals terrorize Kenosha. Joe Biden takes a knee.
The Trump campaign has a new ad out in Wisconsin trying to paint Biden as weak on crime. The Biden ad calls for people rioting and looting to be prosecuted while accusing President Trump of spreading fear.
I believe we'll be guided by the words of Pope John Paul II, words drawn from the scriptures. Be not afraid.
Biden plans to travel to Kenosha tomorrow. His campaign says he'll hold a community meeting to bring people together. Natalie Brand, CBS News, the White House.
Now, that new Biden ad will air nationally on cable television as well as in local markets in Arizona, Florida, Michigan, Minnesota, Nevada, North Carolina, Ohio, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin. The Trump campaign is airing ads in Minnesota, Georgia, Florida, and North Carolina. Well, in Massachusetts, a member of the Kennedy family has lost a statewide election for the first time ever. Senator Ed Markey has successfully fended off a primary challenge from four-term Congressman Joe Kennedy III. Kennedy is the 39-year-old grandson of Robert F. Kennedy. Senator Markey is heavily favored to be reelected in November. And back here in Montana, a group of whitefish property owners want the city to change the name of the lake that they live on. Now, that petition asks the name of Lost Coon Lake to be changed to Lost Loon Lake. The 61-acre lake is located partially within city limits south of Whitefish. Court documents state the name has racist connotations and goes against the city's code of honoring and welcoming the diversity of all citizens and visitors. Well, ahead on your new news, many kids this school year are learning with the click of a mouse. We'll take you on a crash course on options for parents who are also working full-time. But first, Ed's in next with your statewide weather forecast. Don't go away.
It's now with meteorologist Ed McIntosh.
Welcome back to the new news. It's already warm. Temperatures are in the 70s and 80s. And keep in mind, we're seeing 88 right now in Jordan and Glasgow. And an average high this time of the year is upper 70s to low 80s. And we pushed right past that into the eastern plains. But at the same time, the humidity continues to drop now into the teens and 20s across all of Montana and northern Wyoming. Some of the readings could be as low as even single digits or at least low teens by later in the afternoon. And check out the winds here as of midday. Gusts of 45 miles an hour up in Cutbank. Also strong winds plus 40 miles an hour around Livingston. A lot of winds 30, 40 to in some cases we can see 50-mile-per-hour wind gusts across the eastern plains as we start getting later into the afternoon. So this combination brings together everything we need for critical wildfire conditions. Warm temperatures, low humidity, strong winds, and that's all across Montana, the western Dakotas, and through most of Wyoming here as of midday as well. Meantime, we've got a strong cold front coming down from Canada. You can already see showers, thunderstorms starting to develop with that, and the upper level winds will continue to push that down into our region as we get through the afternoon and early evening hours. So the red flag warnings for the critical wildfire conditions, low humidity and wind across the eastern plains, western Montana, you're really insulated from a lot of this and got a pretty comfortable day going. But the cold front will sink down across the area through the afternoon, creating more wind as the winds start to dig down from the north, and then as it pushes through, finally the winds will shut down with the setting sun. We'll start to see the front move by, and then we're left with just a little cooler temperatures for the eastern plains tomorrow afternoon. Still looking at above average readings, but even warmer air continues to move in on Friday And areas of the eastern plains, especially the eastern third of the state, could see temperatures close to record setters in the mid-90s by the time we get into Saturday afternoon. So for today, we're looking at quieter weather in western Montana. The blue arrows indicating where we have the strong winds already across the eastern plains, with a cold front continuing to dig down. That could create some isolated showers and thunderstorms, periods of wind through the evening hours. Now, a lot of the moisture is going to have a really hard time trying to make it to the surface along with this cold front because of the real low humidity, and that means stronger winds out of those outflow boundaries from those storms. Temperatures in the 40s to 50s first thing tomorrow with a clearing sky, and then tomorrow we'll look for daytime highs back up into the 70s and 80s, still at or warmer than average for this time of the year. A few clouds, but with a lot less wind, some recover in those relative humidities by later in the day. We pretty much got a pretty comfortable afternoon, a little bit on the warm side, especially through southern Montana and northern Wyoming by the time we start getting into the afternoon and evening hours. So for Kalispell and Missoula, fairly consistent sunshine, those temperatures hanging out in the 80s, maybe even low 90s Friday and Saturday for Missoula. Overnight temperatures in the 40s and low 50s. Great Falls and Helena, periods of wind today will ease up tomorrow, giving you a much more comfortable day, even though the temperatures remain fairly consistent. Again, a bump in those readings on Saturday afternoon could knock you up into the 90s for the afternoon, and then a big cool down on Sunday. Bozeman and Butte looking at periods of wind today, and then fairly consistent temperatures heading into the weekend. And for the eastern plains, Glendive and Billings, periods of wind today, increasing clouds this afternoon. After a slight cool down tomorrow, we could be close to record-setting high temperatures by Saturday afternoon. There's the weather. Back to you, Janelle.
All right, thanks so much, Ed. Well, September is traditionally peak hurricane month, but we've already broke some records here in our country. There have been 7 tropical storms and hurricanes altogether, which is the most to hit by the end of August. Hurricane Laura was also one of the strongest storms on record for the country. Laura killed at least 18 people and left behind widespread outages that are expected to continue for quite a while. Atlantic hurricane season typically lasts through November. Now, even though schools are back in session, some students remain home and are learning remotely. MTN's Marin Sue talked with a parent who not only has tips on how to monitor remote students, but a solution for working parents as well.
As school starts amid the coronavirus pandemic, some students are returning to in-person learning while others are choosing to go remote. Some districts are even doing a hybrid of both. I spoke with one parent who has suggestions if your child is doing remote learning this year, and she even has some options for parents who are working full-time who can't stay home with their kids.
My daughter actually has a heart condition and asthma and anxiety. So she opted to go back to school because her AP classes, but we're actually reevaluating today, and we're probably going to be switching to remote learning.
Kalispell mom Shannon Johnson has 2 kids, one with health problems, who are most likely learning remote this year.
It's scary to have your kids out surrounded by so many people, and it's not just their other students, it's the teachers, people coming in and out.
She has some tips for parents who choose to do remote learning or who go to a school with a hybrid option. She says designate a specific space just for learning and have conversations with your kids about internet usage.
So we've talked about not clicking on links, only using cameras when your teacher is telling you to use your cameras, not going online with people you don't know.
Johnson also runs a daycare facility, and they're providing remote learning options for students whose parents can't monitor them.
We have a separate space. Everybody has their desks, just like in school, and they all have their tablets or computers, whatever they're using.
Johnson says she has 4 staff members and can accommodate up to 16 students. Registered with the state, Johnson says she hopes to hire 2 more full-time employees just in case schools go full remote later this year. In Kalispell, Marin Sue, MTN News.
All right, thanks so much, Marin. Up next, your latest ag news with Russell Nimitz. Stay with us.
Here's your Farm and Ranch report from the Montana Ag Network.
Hi everybody, it's time for your Farm and Ranch news. Well, in an effort to contain a recent wave of COVID-19 cases, the government of South Korea has reimposed heightened social distancing requirements in the Seoul metropolitan area, including restrictions on some food and beverage providers and even a suspension of large gatherings once again. The U.S. Meat Export Federation's president and chief executive officer Dan Hallstrom explains that even though this situation presents a challenge for U.S. beef in one of its largest international destinations, The reduction in sit-down dining can be partially offset by growth in retail beef purchases and even through advancements in takeout and delivery service developed during the COVID-19 pandemic.
We have made a lot of advancements since the initial outbreak within the food service sector on delivery and e-commerce digital platforms. So while the in-restaurant dining is going to take a back seat for a while, we still have pretty robust platforms for restaurant delivery that will still be going strong. The other thing, of course, that is really a positive is that the momentum we had earlier in the year at retail, specifically with our two big partners, Costco and E-Mart, will probably get a shot in the arm as more people stay at home.
And 2020 has also been a challenging year for U.S. pork exports to South Korea, primarily due to an increase in domestic pork production. But Hallstrom says U.S. pork continues to capitalize on Koreans' rapidly growing appetite for home meal replacement items and other products that emphasize consumer convenience. Well, stay with us. We'll have more egg news right after this. Populations have been observed across most of our region this year, and now university extension experts say these grasshopper populations have required management in some other crops and should be monitored prior to and during winter wheat planting this fall. They say most observations have been of the two-striped grasshoppers, but it's also likely that other species are present as well. Now, the increased grasshopper population, they say, is likely due to abundant food sources last year. But as this season progresses, there's going to be reduced food availability due to crop aging and the currently dry conditions across the region. Now, these factors, they say, will force the grasshoppers to seek green plants such as newly emerged wheat plants. So it's very important to scout emerging winter wheat for grasshoppers and feeding injury, especially in those areas where large grasshopper populations are being observed before and after planting. And finally today, for our viewers in Wyoming, Governor Gordon has announced the launch of the Wyoming Meat Processing Expansion Grant Program to provide support for Wyoming meat processing facilities and Wyoming citizens impacted by supply chain disruptions and regional shutdowns of processing facilities resulting from the COVID-19 public health emergency. Now, the governor has actually appropriated some $10 million in federal CARES Act funds to the program, which seeks to strengthen Wyoming's local food supply chain and address meat shortages at retail locations and food banks across the Cowboy State. Well, that's a look at your farm and ranch news. Have a great day.
All right, thanks so much, Russell. Well, here's some food for thought this noon. The country's first ever mobile drive-through in Great Falls. Well, Dave Snuggs calls it the Carnivorium and offers a variety of hamburgers and hot dogs. He says he got the idea after seeing long lines at drive-thrus during the pandemic. The trailer will be parked at businesses around the city and will donate a portion of the proceeds to a nonprofit of the business's choosing. And some good news for hunters. Archery season kicks off this weekend. Starting this coming Saturday, licensed hunters can hunt antelope, bighorn sheep, deer, elk, and other game. Montana Fish, Wildlife, and Parks has more information on the season and regulations on its website. It's going to be okay weather for hunting.
It will be. Yeah, temperatures are going to be really warm, and sometimes that'll, of course, drive things up a little bit into the higher elevations. But in the short term, we're going to be dealing with the wind for today and those fire weather conditions. But as we get into the next several days, we'll be looking at temperatures consistently in the 80s for most of the highs. There is a downturn of the temperatures as we get closer to the Labor Day weekend, and especially for Labor Day itself into early next week. Look for temperatures as cool as the 50s and 60s by Labor Day.
All right, thanks, Ed.